Okay, before we dive into drill down views or detail views, I want to look at some of the color coding that we have in the system because it spans list views and detail views. So if we look at this screen here on the customer screen, you can see there's two different colors, yellow and red. So the yellow, anything that's marked in yellow, any record that's marked in yellow has a warning, and any record that's marked in red has some kind of error. Okay, so some kind of problem with it. Now, in the list view, you can't see exactly what the warning or the error is. So you have to go into the drill down view or the detail view to be able to see the detail of the error. So that's the first thing you need to know. So let's go into, let's start here on my record here, and we can see that actually here there's both a warning and an error. So this is a good example. So the warning message is seen in the top right. You won't see these a lot, because normally you won't be able to get the record into an error state, but sometimes something can happen that can get it into an error state. And you can see here, so for example, this record for one reason or another has multiple addresses marked as the default shipping and multiple marked as the default billing. So we would fix that and that would go away. The other problem that we see with this record is not so much of a problem, but a warning. And there can be multiple reasons why a warning will come up in the system. But in this case, you can see it's because this customer has an open balance. So you can see down here, balance, there are two currency balances open. So the customer owes money. So that's being marked as a warning. So like I say, you can see that in both the list view and the drill down view. The other thing that spans list and drill down views is also related to color, which is this color tagging system that we have. So you can see here a little line of red on the left. And if I go back to the list view, you'll see also in the record here in the list view on the left, it's also marked in red. And you can see this first one is marked in green. Okay. So again, this spans list and drill down view. So here we see in red, we click in, we go into the detail view, and we see red as well. What is this for? So this is a very sort of simple color coding system within Pakk that you can use for any purpose you want. So it's an adaptable organization system. It's kind of based on the idea of colored stickers, which lots of businesses use to organize things, documents or boxes in the warehouse. Lots of businesses use these little colored stickers. So this concept is based on the colored stickered concept. And you use it for whatever you want inside your business. So, and it's not just customers. I'm showing it to you here on customers, but if I go to items, you can see some of these items are marked with green as well. And again, if I go into this item, you'll see it's marked in green as well. So it can be used across the whole system. Any record for any entity that you want to use this color organization system for, you can. And like I say, you can see it on both the list and the item view. So now we can go into what we call detail views, or sometimes you'll hear me call them drill down views. And so this is an example of one. Obviously, to get to a drill down view is very easy. You click on view in the list view and that gets you into the detail view. So here we're on this one that we've seen in some of the previous tutorials in this series. So it's 25 sushi, the SKU. So let's examine the drill down view from top to bottom and see all the different components of it. So starting from the top, you've got the name of the entity. So this is an item entity. So if we go back to customer and go into one, you'll see it says customer here. So this is just a sort of reminder of what you're looking at and what type of record you're looking at in the system at any point. Going back to the items and 25 sushi. The little eye icon is a help icon. Now I'll talk a little bit further down the line about in-field help. So this is a way to get help on any kind of field in the system right from the admin panel. But this will give you a high level help about the entity. So if I click on that, it'll basically tell me what an item is. So in this case, it's kind of obvious. It's not that useful, but that's what that little icon is. It's to get help about the entity. Then we have a unique identifier. So this will depend on what you're looking at. This depends on what type of record or what entity you're looking at. So for an item, you'll see the SKU. For a customer, you'll see the customer name. It's just different for every entity, and it's the most unique, let's say, the most unique way to identify that record. This is an internal identifier. 99% of the time, you're not going to have to worry about that. That's like a database identifier. Again, so it's something technical. Sometimes it's useful in certain circumstances to be able to access it. That's why we put it there. But generally, you don't have to worry about it. And then we have a link back to the list that you came to this detail view from. So if I click here, it's going to take me back to items and I go back. So that's just a quick way of doing that. That's preferable to using the back button on the browser. Okay, it's just a quicker way to navigate. And then these buttons will navigate the list view without going back to the list view. Okay, so it depends which list you came from. So if you come from this list, you can see like the next one is 7-piece sushi and then Canadian pancakes. So if I go back and I navigate through it, we're going to get to 7-piece sushi, we're going to get to Canadian pancakes. So it's just like we were navigating in the list view one by one. And that's a really quick way if you're sort of comparing features between records or something like that, rather than going back to the list, clicking on view, coming back to the drill down view, you can navigate the list view really quickly with these little arrows. That's a kind of pro tip. Then we have the create new button. So this is, again, the same way we've talked about the create new button. You can get this in the list view, and you could also get it in the little plus here in the menu. It's the same thing. It's just going to get you to the create new screen for whatever entity you're looking at. Okay, so that's the sort of everything above this line here. Then there's another section of buttons. Okay, and in this particular entity, there's only two. There's edit and duplicate. You'll see those on all of them. Edit gets you into edit mode, which we'll talk about in a minute. Duplicate will create a new version of this with almost all the fields filled out for you. There'll be a few that won't be filled out that can't be duplicated. For example, the SKU or the website slug, certain fields that just can't be duplicated, but everything else will be duplicated for you. This is very useful functionality. This is, rather than creating things from new, honestly, when I'm using Pakk, I very rarely create things from new. I'll almost always click on duplicate, change some fields. It stops you forgetting stuff, and it's just a much quicker way of doing things. So I will use the duplicate much more than I would use the create new button, for example. Now I'm going to try and find an example of some more buttons. Okay, so I think if we go to sales orders, here's a test order that we've placed on this account. You see there's many more buttons now, as well as a warning, which we talked about at the beginning of this video. But here's a big row of buttons, action buttons, and a couple more buttons here on the right. So let's go through these. So edit and duplicate we talked about. The next buttons that you see are specific to the record you're looking at. So that's specific to an order. So an order has a different set of buttons, for example, than a customer would. You can do different things with it, but it also depends on the state of the order. So for example, this order has the button clear commitments available because the stock is committed. If the stock wasn't committed, you wouldn't see the clear commitment buttons. So what I'm trying to say is these action buttons are dependent on what state the particular record you're looking at is in. So if you can't see the action you're looking for at any one point, it could be that that action isn't available on that particular record. Now, a lot of these buttons correspond directly to the actions that are available in the list view. So if we look at these here, we can see payment, clear commitments, dispatch, blah, blah, blah. If we go back to sales orders, not in this view, but if we pick another view, and we looked at this when we were looking at list views. So pending payment, for example, and I've got here the payment action. So this would be the bulk way of doing the same thing as clicking the single button on that record. Okay, so if we go back, sales orders here, that payment action is the same as the bulk payment action, but in this case, it's only going to do it for this one record. So I click here and it gives me the payment pop up to be able to sort to enter a payment on this order. Okay, and I can click on reject and go back. So essentially all these buttons are specific actions to perform only on this record. And like I say, they'll vary from record to record. Now, over to the right, there's two more icons, which you're going to see on most records as well. And that's print and email. So again, depending on what the record is, these are very dependent on what you're looking at. But in the case of a sales order, you can open up the print dialog, and that's going to offer you different transaction forms to print. So as an invoice or lots of different options, you can override the language and you can basically produce a PDF. That's what printing means in Pakk. It's always downloading a PDF. Okay. The other option is on for emailing. You can click here and you get a bit more of a complex email dialog, and you can email the transaction directly out from Pakk. Now, the emailing functionality is depends on what you're looking at. So we're looking at a sales order here, but for example, you'd also see this on a purchase order where you could email the purchase order directly to the supplier. In this case, obviously, we would be emailing the sales order to the customer. And it just depends on what you're looking at, and it's sensitive to what you're looking at. And that's going to give you the option to choose which template, or you can override the template and type in a custom message. You can also, instead of sending it from the account email, you can send it from your personal email. And then you can choose the recipient. So you can choose to send it to the main email of the customer on the order. You can add ad hoc contacts. You can CC it. So there's quite a lot of power here in terms of who it goes to. You would click confirm to send the message off. And then there's a record of these messages sent, and I'll show you that a bit later. There's a log of messages, which we'll come on to. You can also preview the message as well. If you click the preview button, that's going to show you the message that you're about to send. If you're not quite sure what it's going to look like, you can use that to preview the message. Right. So that's sort of, we've covered everything in this area, and then we've covered this action line, let's say the actions and the print and the email dialogue. The next thing to look at would be the basic fields, or the common fields here. So this first block of fields is very, very similar. It's 90% similar across everything on the system. So whether you're looking at a sales order or whether you're looking at an item or a customer, you're going to see most of the same fields here. Obviously, for transactions, for example, you'll see a currency. You won't see a currency on an item, for example. But generally, most of these are the same. And it's things like when this record was created, when it was last modified, if it's cancelled in the case, or cancelled or closed for transactions, inactive or active for non-transactions, and then things like date, ref. These are common to transactions. If we go to an item, which is a non-transaction, then you'll see a slightly different set of fields. Okay, and there is another, in the case of transactions, there's something that we missed actually here up in the top set of bits of information. You'll often see these tags, let's call them, next to the reference. So in this case, you see committed and invoiced. And in the case of sales orders, that is telling you what stage or status the sales order's in. But other entities, you'll also see little tags or stickers there, and that's meant to convey important information visually and quickly. So again, it just depends on what type of, if you're looking at a credit, it might tell you whether it's refunded or not. So it's just a way of sort of giving a high level status or stage information very quickly. So you might see those again in that's another common thing across the system.